Hello, welcome back to a new video here in our Pro course, and today we are talking a little bit about trading around the news and about fundamentals in general and how we treat them. But first of all, it's very important to understand that we are only technical traders. We only use technical analysis for our decision making, and we never take fundamentals into account when making a trading decision. However, as Forex traders, there are news virtually coming out 24 hours every day. There's always new news coming up, and it is important to understand how we deal with them so that we are, one, not scared by them, and second, that we can make the right decisions and we are not overlooking something. So first of all, we need to look at news calendars, and there are a few ones. I use Forex Factory for the most part, but you can also use FX Street. There are multiple calendars out there, and I will put a link to Forex Factory and FX Street in the description below this video. And there are three things that you need to do. First, you have to check the calendar every morning before you start your trading day so that you are aware what has happened over the night and also what is coming up during the day. It's very important to be aware of high impact news that are coming up. And if you want, you can also make a quick note next to your keyboard or next to your trading desk so that you have an overview about the big news. Then second, you also need to check your calendar every evening, especially if you are in a trade and then you are wrapping up your trading day. You need to check the calendar and see if something important is coming up overnight and if you have to adjust your positions or make any decisions. And of course, you have to check the calendar before every trade and what you have to look there and what you have to do when it comes to actual trading decisions that we will take a look at later. So here is the Forex Factory news calendar, forexfactory.com, and here is the news items for the day. You can see today is, for this example, is a pretty quiet day. Here at the top right, you can see the local time for you, and then here you have a few options. So first of all, let me just open the calendar so you can see the interval. It is set for only today. You can set it for this week, for next week, last month, this month, and next month. You can also set some customized intervals. That's totally up to you. So if we change here now, you can see for this week, then we see all the news for the US dollar in this case. And here you have this little filter icon. When we click, then you can see that you can select different things here. So these are all the news items. We will go over them later. They are categorized by three categories: high impact news, the very important ones; medium impact news; low impact news, and those are others. Then you can also see that are different event types that you can select that you want to show or not show. And here we can select or deselect all the different currencies that we want to have our alerts or events set for. And now you can see we have this news calendar for this week, and we will go over those things in the later part of this video. But this is basically how you would navigate around this news calendar, how you use the filters. And then here on the left hand side, you always see the date. You see when the news is coming up. Then you see the currency that the news is likely to impact. Here you see the impact level, medium for orange, red is the high impact news. Then you have the type of the news. Here you can click on this little folder and then a little description will pop up. You can see what this news is about, why the traders care. Then you see the effect or a likely effect or usual effect, they call it here. And you can see the frequency, when it's coming up. And then you can also see a history of the previous news and the releases. And then here you have three different columns. The actual numbers, those are the ones released for the specific news item on this day. Then you have the forecast, usually done by experts. And then you have the previous data, so you can see a little trend. Then when we click here on graph, you can see that this will open, and then you can see here a history of the different events or about the development of this news item. And that's basically it, how you would use this news calendar for the basic navigation. We will get back to this in a bit. So as I said, there are high and medium impact news items. We typically don't care about the low impact news item, as we will see later. So when it comes to the high or the medium impact news items, there are 8 very important ones that we will look at or that we need to be aware of when making trading decisions. First of all, obviously, interest rate decisions, because the interest rates are essentially what is driving a currency devaluation or appreciation. So that is very important, and it can move the forex markets a lot, and often also be the start for a new trend. Then we have NFP, which stands for non-farm payrolls and unemployment or employment data, and also hourly earnings. Those are all categorized as employment data, and they are usually released once a month, especially when it comes to NFP. We do have unemployment coming out a little bit more often during the month, but NFP and the employment data on the first Friday of the month is usually the biggest mover. Then we have, of course, GDP, gross domestic product. It is how well the economy is doing, and an estimation or an overview on how much the economy is producing. Then we have CPI, PPI, and PMI. Those are usually good estimations for inflation. Consumer price index is especially important, and this can also be a big mover because it gives an idea of the inflation level. And of course, if inflation goes up and down, this is then used to make interest rates decisions by the central bankers, and that's why it is so important. Then we have retail sales as well, very important, and consumer confidence. It shows the confidence, obviously, about the consumers in the economy, and also a good market mover. Then speeches and FOMC meetings or FOMC statements are also very, very important ones. Crude oil is also regarded as a high impact news sometimes. In recent history, it has not been such a big mover. It is important for oil producing currency countries, such as the Canadian dollar. Sometimes it does affect the US dollar as well. It's also a big mover for US oil or crude oil as well. So when we go back to our news calendar for this week, as an example, you can see here that we have those that I only look at medium and high impact news, and you can see some things like CPI, then year on year. So this is a yearly data, kind of important here. You can see it's highlighted as high impact news for the British pound. Then we have other things like PPI, average earnings. Here you can see we have crude oil inventories. It's highlighted as a high impact news item. Employment and unemployment data. Then we have production, obviously, LIBOR rate for the interest rates. Then we have SNB, a monetary statement, Swiss National Bank, other monetary policy summaries or statements here. Those are also big movers when the politicians or central bankers talk about the economy, about interest rates and potential interest rates developments. Those can be very big movers. And so you can see that we have all those items here, and if you want to know more about them, as I said, just click on the folder here, and then it will pop up, and you can get a good description of what is happening here, or why this news event is so important. So finally, we are coming to the last step, and the most important step is what we are doing or what we are going to do around the news. And there are three news categories, as I already said: low, medium, and high impact news. And the low impact news, we are just typically ignoring them because even on the 1 hour chart, they are not really that impactful. On the daily and the 4 hour, they are barely visible. So as you've seen, I don't even filter for them in my news calendar, and I typically completely ignore them. The medium impact news items are not important or not as important for 4 hour trades, and also for daily trades, usually not at all. There are a few exceptions for some speeches, but in general, we don't typically pay too much attention to medium impact news items on the 4 hour and the daily, but on the 1 hour, we do take them into account. High impact news items, obviously very important for 4 hour and daily candles and timeframes as well. So I like decision trees, and that's why here I share this decision tree. I already pointed this out in the forum, but here we have it again. So when news items or news events are coming up, then there are usually a few things that you have to consider and a few options that you can choose from. So the first one is, what are we going to do when the price is close to my entry? So this is typically when price has barely moved away from your entry. Either you're in a small profit or in a small loss, and then big news events are coming up. And in such a case, I will almost always close out my trade completely, because it is a big gamble. Either price will spike into your stop, or it will spike into a profit. But usually we don't want to be in such a situation where we cannot really control the outcome, where we are just subject to a lot of uncertainty. So in such a case, I will just close out my trade. When the price is close to my take profit order, I usually do the same. I just close the trade because, so for example, when the trade, so when I was looking for a 50 pip take profit and price has made it 40 or 45 pips to my take profit order, then I will usually close the trade because there's not much really to gain. The worst case price will spike against me, either hit my stop loss if I've adjusted it or get me out for a low profit. On the other hand, there is not much to gain. On the other hand, just a little bit more multiples. And usually if that is just a very small amount, you want to close out your trade as well and not gamble with your profits. And then the tough part is, what are you doing when the price is somewhere between the take profit and the entry price? It is not really close to your entry, also not really that close to your take profit order. It is just hovering somewhere in the middle. And then you have three options. So the first one is the regular one. You close maybe 50% of your position and let the rest run. You can also adjust the stop loss a little bit, not put it too close in such a scenario. You want to give your trade a little bit breathing room. So close parts of the trade and let the rest run is usually the regular approach, what you can do here. And how much you close here depends on you. If you close 40, 50, 60% of the trade and let the rest run is totally up to you. You can experiment and see what works for you and then make a decision. Then if you are more risk averse, you don't like to have a lot of risk, you don't like to be in such situations where you cannot really control what is happening, you are just having to wait out what is happening in the news, then you would just close all your trade, close the trade completely, and then sit out the news. And you are a little bit more risk seeking, then you move your stop loss. Again, don't move the stop loss too close. You don't want to suffocate the trade. You need to give your trade a little bit breathing room so that it has some room for volatility, especially during news. It's very important. And then you let the rest run, and sometimes you will get a big winner. Some traders, even in this scenario, they then adjust or completely take out the trade or completely take out the take profit order, and then in some cases they will get a huge winning trade when the news is in their favor. So it is a little bit more risk seeking, a little bit more advanced. Typically I don't recommend this in your first few months or even in the first year. So this is really to be seen with caution. Usually the first is the conservative or the regular one, and that is usually a good idea or a good approach for starters. Then finally, what are you doing when there is a new setup coming up or it is just forming, but then you see that there is a new news event coming up? And then usually what I do is I wait 30 to 60 minutes after such a news release before I take new trades. So if I see there's a high impact news event coming up, but also at the same time there's a trade forming, then I will wait a little bit and I'm not entering just at the news. I don't want to be in such a spot. And then once the dust has settled, once the volatility has cooled off, then I will get into such a trade. If the situation still looks good, if the volatility is not too much, then you can still consider such a trade. Something very nice about TradingView is that you can actually find out how previous news events have impacted your pairs. And that is especially very important or very interesting and a good learning opportunity if you're just starting out or if you want to know more about fundamental trading. So first you click on this chart properties symbol, then you will see this little pop-up here, and then we go to events and alerts. We take the box here for show economic events, and then you can already see that here at the bottom you see those icons now. Then we click on OK, and when we now hover over them, you can see that when we click on them that you get here a little window or a little information about the news events. So what those are past news events, and you can see here which type of news were here released. Export sales, then you have different types here, and you can just click through them. You have PMI, composite PMI, and so on and so forth. And you can go to the lower time frames as well to really pinpoint the news event here on the 4-hour. Sometimes they're a little bit clustered, but if you go to the lower time frames, then you can get a good feeling for how such a previous news event has really impacted here the price. And so you can answer for yourself which news event is really important, which news event is usually not a big market mover, and so you can remove a lot of doubt and find answers for yourself. And so that's really it for trading around the news. As I said, we are technical traders, we don't really trade fundamentals, but at the same time it is very important to be aware of fundamentals and knowing how to react and play them. I hope you enjoyed this, and I see you in the next video. Again, if you have any